Hi, I'm Bob Baulch with the That's Jesus channel. Thanks for tuning in. In this episode of Jesus and Genesis, we're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 11, 27 through 32. Now, that's not a lot of verses there, but what we have is, just to let the cat out of the bag, we have the start of a prototype, the start of a pattern in this scripture. Basically, the pattern is this. Let me jump right into it. The pattern is that someone who worships idols is given the mission of going to the promised land, and he fails, and his son has to do it instead of him. So let's go on ahead and get into this. If you're into a memory verse, here it is. It's Genesis 11:31. It says, Terah took Abram, his son, and Lot, the son of Haran, his grandson, and Sarai, his daughter-in-law, his son Abram's wife, and they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan, and they went as far as Haran and settled there. So if you've not read Genesis 11:27 through 32, go on and stop this video right now, read it. We'll wait on you to come back, and welcome back. So what we're looking at is this is following the genealogy from Shem to Terah. But before we get into the details of Abram's call from God, we're given the brief account of Terah's life. And really, what a life it could have been. Terah was a pagan. Now, even though his 7 times great-grandfather Noah was still alive and could have given him a first-hand account of the foolishness of unrighteous living and the seriousness of sin, Terah did not serve God. According to Joshua in Genesis 24:2, Terah served idols. In fact, the word Joshua uses, which is translated as served, can also mean worked. So maybe Terah did more than just serve those false gods. Maybe he actually crafted them or was talented in using them in some way. We know that Rachel, Terah's 2 times great-granddaughter, eventually stole some of the household idols that belonged to her father, and maybe these were the family idols that actually originated with Terah. We don't know. I mean, they were called teraphim, but there's really no etymological link there. It's just a similarity in the word. But there is a possibility that Terah could have created these idolatrous figures. We just don't know. But what we do know is that at some point, while he was an old man, he moved himself and his entire family, including his adult children who were married, out of Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan. Now, it's always good to use cross-references in these studies, because while Genesis doesn't tell us why Terah moved, Stephen does in Acts 7, verses 2 through 4. Apparently, Abram, Terah's son, was visited by God while the family lived in Ur of the Chaldeans, and he was told to move to Canaan. And Abram was obedient, and he left all of his relatives, except for his immediate family, which would include his father, Terah, and he left his homeland. And Terah and his family, they make their way to a place called Haran. And once they arrived there, Terah could just go no further. The scriptures say that they went out together from Ur of the Chaldeans in order to enter the land of Canaan, and they went as far as Haran, and they settled there. So the exact reasons why they paused their journey to Canaan are not given. Maybe Terah missed his son Haran and could go no further, so he founded a community named after him. We don't know. Or maybe the community already existed with that name, Haran, and Terah was too heartbroken to continue after being reminded of his dead son. He had a son named Haran who died. Or maybe Terah simply just got too old to go on. We don't know. But nevertheless, the family stayed in Haran until Abram's father died. Terah did not make the trip to Canaan. He was supposed to, but he didn't make his way there. So we're going to pause just real fast and get a little into Scripture and refute some of the claims that the Bible is contradicting itself when it comes to these Scriptures. Critics of the Bible are going to say that this text is proof that the Bible contradicts itself. Specifically, this is what they point to. They say that Genesis 11:32 says that Terah lived to be 205 years old before he died. And then they compare it with 3 verses, Genesis 11:26 and Genesis 12:4 and Acts 7:4, that say that Terah was 70 years old when he had children, and that Abram was 75 years old when he left Haran upon his father's death. So on the surface, it looks like Terah died at both 205 years old, that's Genesis 11:32, and 145 years old. That's taking those other verses and kind of doing the math. So this is really not explained by rounding up or down, right? I mean, those are 2 very different numbers. So how can they both be accurate? Well, here's the deal. They're not both accurate. Simply put, the answer is in Genesis 11:26, where Terah lived to be to the age of 70, and then he had 3 mentioned sons. So our Western thinking brains assume that the list will be in order from the oldest to the youngest, but that is not the typical Eastern way of doing things. Many times the list of names will have the most significant person listed first. For instance, Noah's sons are listed as Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But Genesis 9:24 says that Ham was the youngest. He's not the middle child. He's the youngest. And several versions of Genesis 10:21 list Japheth as being older than Shem. Why is Japheth older than Shem, but Shem is listed first? Eventually, we'll get to Jacob and Esau, but note that they're almost always referred to in that order, in spite of the fact that Esau is the oldest. The point that I'm trying to make is that the child listed first is the most important, not the oldest. So Terah begins having his 3 named sons at the age of 70, and Abram is listed first, not because he's the oldest that was born when Terah was 70. He's listed first because he's the most significant of the brothers. Over the course of the next 60 years, Terah has at least 3 sons between the ages of 70 and 130, and Abram, being born in Terah's 130th year, even though he's the youngest, he's the most significant, so he's listed first. That's the most simple and logical explanation. However, today's lesson is not intended to focus on how old Terah was when he died. We'll get into this pattern now that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. This pattern establishes it more and more and more. If I do a Jesus in Exodus book, we'll get into that more. But what I'd like to point out is an interesting model that plays itself out and acts as a template in the life of the Messiah. And this is the first instance of this prototype in Scripture. So pay attention. Here we go. We have Terah, who's a worshiper of idols, and he begins the quest of reaching and occupying the Promised Land. And he will be led by his son, Abram. However, along the way, Terah becomes distracted. He does not fulfill his mission. And God, however, will not allow his plans to be thwarted. And he uses Terah's son to not only get to the Promised Land, but also to create a covenant that will bless the world. So does that sound familiar? I think it really should. Eventually, in the book of Exodus, we'll have the nation of Israel, who's constantly reverting back to worshiping idols. They begin the quest of reaching and occupying the Promised Land, and they will be led by God's Son in the form of a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire, and actually a rock. Don't worry about that. Well, it'll make sense when you get to Exodus. But however, along the way, they become distracted, and they do not fulfill their mission, but God will not allow his plans to be thwarted, and he uses a son of Israel. Eventually, he'll use his son as well, but he uses a son of Israel to not only get to the Promised Land, but also to create a better covenant that will bless the world. So that is basically this short little section of Genesis. Now, who is that distant grandson that Terah has? And who is that distant grandson of Abram? And who is that son of the Israelite nation? Even more important, who is the Son of God? And the answer to those questions, that's Jesus. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I hope this was a short little lesson that you can take away and you can say, wow, there are a lot of patterns in Scripture. This is one of them. I hope you have a blessed day. Give me a like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you don't mind. I'm Bob Baulch with That's Jesus Channel. Be blessed.